Thank you very much. I'm going to keep this pretty informal. I'm very honored to be here among you, and particularly those of you in the family. You know, it doesn't matter how many generations we move away. Every time I meet a new family member, I always think I've met you before. You look, there's always something in the eyes, there's something that's familiar that looks like Harriet. And I don't know, I guess that's probably true of my family too, but no, I don't know, but it is always an honor to be among you, and thank you for preserving Harriet Tubman's memory, not just for yourselves, but for all of us. This is a labor of love for me. I've always been a huge fan of history. I was a history major myself in college, American history, and so I had actually studied Harriet before, but I had no idea growing up in central New York that she was here, and certainly not how much history there was. And one of my missions has been to try to really talk to people about Harriet Tubman and how important she is today, that this is not just about our history. I think, you know, it's fine in the Underground Railroad, and the people that Harriet helped lead out of slavery and her own struggles with that horrible institution are important, but they're hardly the whole story. This is a woman who was a true humanist before that term ever was born, who worked with for women's rights, worked with the elderly, was somebody who truly knew what traumatic brain injury was before anybody had ever heard of traumatic brain injury. She was a spiritualist. She was truly a really Renaissance woman. And the more you learn about her, the more you learn all of those different kinds of aspects of her. And of course, the quote that I always love the most about Harriet is that she let 1,000 people out of slavery. She could have let 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves. And I don't think that that was just about that specific institution. I think that's about the slavery that all of us are under, and it's one that we all must fight because it comes often from within. This is, like I said, it's a labor of love, because I think if we can get a national park here, we in Auburn, and those of you in academia who study Harriet and the family, we already know her. We already know her. It's sharing it with people who don't know her. And a national park, I believe, is absolutely essential to that. I think it will improve the economy, and of course I'm a congressman and I'm all about jobs and I want to do that. But it's also about just getting people from all over the country, frankly all over the world, to know that this is here. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I walked among these buildings. They're still here. I mean, you know, in Maryland, they're jealous of us because in Maryland, yeah, they have the store where she was injured, but mostly they just have the land, and that has a spiritual meaning too, but they don't have the kind of real assets that we have here in Auburn. And it was on purpose. I mean, the reason why she ended up here was because William Seward wanted her here. She said, "I want you near me." And then she insisted on paying for it. And there's all sorts of different narrations on that. But the point is that I don't think this is accidental, and I think it's very, very important. So a national park. So, you know, where are we with the legislation? It's HR 664. Somebody asked me what the number was, and I didn't know, so I just looked it up. Look, the challenge, there are two challenges right now with the legislation. But both of them, I think, illustrate that we've gotten farther than we've ever gotten before. We have a huge bipartisan coalition in the House that is sponsoring this bill, including every single member of the New York State delegation, upstate, downstate, New York City. They realize the importance of this to our entire state, Republicans, Democrats, it doesn't matter. We have had a hearing for the first time in the House. It was a hearing that went well. There are some things that we need to work on, but those were identified in the hearing. It's all part of the process. And in order to have a hearing in the House, it means you have to have the Republican chair want the hearing. And I've had a lot of communications with the Republican chair, as well as the Democratic ranking member, so we're doing well in the House. In the Senate, the bill has been vetted properly. It's past the hearing stage, and actually is ripe to come to the floor. And the challenge there is the second problem, which I'll get to in a minute. But clearly we've gotten farther than we've ever gotten before. We are very in close partnership with our Maryland colleagues. The only thing is there are some issues that are disagreements about some of the way the land is treated in Maryland, not in New York. And of course, Maryland and us are working very closely, but they do have they did go the monument route, and we've decided not to do that because it really warrants a park. But there are going to be a lot of discussions that we have in the days ahead. But do not lose heart. I do think it's very possible that it will pass this Congress. It doesn't mean, though, that we can let up, and it doesn't mean that we should give up if somehow it doesn't. But I think we're in far better shape than we've ever been before. The second challenge is the challenge that has nothing to do with this bill, with this part, with any piece of legislation, other than the fact that nothing is happening right now in Washington. Frankly, Washington could use a dose of Harriet Tubman's persuasion. I think maybe a gun to our backs and sort of keep going. It'd probably be a pretty good thing for Washington in a number of different areas right now. The challenge is that in an era when no park legislation is going through at all. So we're right at the top. I mean, we're right at the top. There's a few other park projects. Well, we made it sort of the top like the priorities. But for a while, no parks legislation was being allowed to go through the Senate because the senator was mad about something that had nothing to do with any of them. Now that hold has been lifted, but we still have issues with the House, and the House not wanting to bring these bills to the floor, and the government shutdown, all this stuff, so it's all part and parcel of the same thing. So we are making progress. The fact that we have strong bipartisan support is very helpful, and I do think that we will, we will get there. It is a matter of that kind of persistence that Harriet Tubman showed. Even if it looks like we may have taken a wrong path for a second and then have to go back, the key thing is as she said, to keep going. I do think that we're going to continue to talk with Maryland and just to make sure that, we've got lots of strategies available to us, and we keep an open mind on absolutely everything that we can do, as long as we continue to work together. What we don't want to do is work to cross purposes, because they've been so helpful to us, we've been so helpful to them, and we're better off pooling our resources than separating them. And truly, Harriet Tubman's life should be seen as one whole. Without any piece of it, I think she would have been a very different person. She drew strength from times in her life when things did not look so good. And we must do the same thing when we dedicate this park. So anyway, I'm very, very glad to be here. I do want you to know that I truly dedicate myself to this. But any suggestions you might have, please, keep them coming. Ian Phillips, if you're here in Auburn, Ian's office we have an office here in Auburn, in Washington as well, and but also we're in very, very close touch with the AME Zion Church. So make sure that we know, because it is truly a very important thing. And then the last thing I want to say is just a thank you for keeping the memory alive outside of a national park context. Because the fact is we wouldn't even be talking about a national park, all these buildings, if all of you, if the people who study and cherish her history, the family, and the AME Zion Church haven't done such an amazing job with so few resources. And we realize that. That's why we want to get the park, so we can get at least some resources of preserving both the physical sites, exploring the archaeology involved, and also her incredible memory and all those stories. So thank you very, very much. One last thing, because it's Veterans Day weekend, of course I'm doing a lot of Veterans Day stuff, and we've got to leave you for a parade in Syracuse. But that fits perfectly well with Harriet Tubman, who was a decorated Civil War veteran herself and buried with military honors. So thank her for her service, thank all of you